Greetings everyone through here. Welcome to the DemoHub YouTube channel, where we bring you the latest and the greatest in the world of technology and data. Today, we're going to be setting our sights on, pun intended, Snowflake SQL, the powerhouse for data warehousing, the platform loved by analysts and data engineers worldwide. There are 5 spectacular functions we're going to unpack. This will help you transform the way you work with data. At the end, we're going to leave you with a bonus feature as well available within the Snowflake experience. You do not want to miss that. Hopefully, at the end of this presentation, this walkthrough, you will be very delighted and being able to take these functions into your everyday task. That said, let's jump into the very first function we are going to look at today, which is the CONCAT. Take a look at a table with data. As expected, the table does have rows and columns, the age, work class, and some good dimensional data, the country, and the income. The first use case we're going to see with concat is being able to take 2 strings and concat them in a very straightforward format. If we have age as an example, education as an example, we can obviously have a scenario of wanting to concat those 2 together to see age and education. You can also concat by leveraging the positions of that data. In this case, concat the very first column just to verify what we have. Age and education is column 4. Concat that, we get the same results, just in a little bit of a different approach. If we want, obviously, we can put in spacing to make this look a little bit more appealing to the eyes. We have our age and education all concatenated. Now, concat by itself is interesting, but it wouldn't make it to this list if there wasn't a little bit of a unique piece about concat, which we're going to see. That case is concat star. Now, let's unpack concat star a little bit. To see that, we're going to go back, do a select star of our data. We're getting just the first 10 columns. Go in and take a look at this data, specifically paying attention to the capital gain and the capital loss for this particular profile. Here we have 765 and null. We do have some null values. But imagine the scenario where we want to write a statement where if there are nulls in any one of the columns we receive from our data engineering, from the pipelines, we want to identify any column that contains null values. In this case, this column should be identified and this column should be identified. But we don't know where the null value could be found. It could be found in any column. One way of doing this could be potentially having a check if null on each column. And doing so, I could see a way of using a COALESCE function, which we're going to talk about here shortly, to achieve that. I'm sure there are ways to do it, but what we're going to see here is how having a concat and concat star makes it super easy for us to achieve something like that. So let's go ahead and introduce concat star. As it says, we're going to go in and we're doing a concat, but instead of specifying specific column names, we're just going to do a concat star. Watch what happens when we execute this result. Concat star now, as it expects, it does concat everything for us. But what happens with column 1? It returns null. What happens to column 8? It returns null. So if it detects a null in a column, in any one of those columns, it by default returns a null. This could be really powerful. So if you think about doing data quality, or there might be different use cases for this, but having this visibility can tell you, well, maybe your ETL pipeline is broken if you didn't expect null in any of your columns. Now go in and remediate that. So concat star could be a really, really good option to use. Now, there is a companion to concat star, which is also very powerful, and we'll copy that, which is the concat star. And in this case, we're going to do the white space. I think that's what that WS means. So let's go ahead and execute that to see what we get. It does the same thing, but it does give us a little bit of a different format. Now, the beauty or the difference between using this or using with spacing is we can go in and introduce delimiters, because you might still want to know what this column is about and have the right delimiters in there. So here, let's go ahead and introduce a new delimiter, make that a pipe, and still do a concat star with that. We now have this formatted more presentably, but we still can tell that this column has nulls. And if you're doing data quality, this could be something really, really, really powerful and really good for you to know. So that is the very first SQL Delight function we're looking at today. Let's clean this up and jump into the second SQL Delight function to be aware of working within Snowflake to supercharge your analytics. Now, going back to the trusted data set we have, we're going to see here, let's just refresh ourselves with what we have here. We do have age, obviously, we have capital gains and capital loss. Imagine the situation where we might be doing some analysis, trying to figure out how is a portfolio performing, which of this has the greater value, and we want to compare this. There are ways to go in and use case statements, and we can always compare that. But the goal of this is to make it delightful, is to be a delight. Let's see how we can use some really cool functions in Snowflake to achieve those goals. This is where the greatest function comes into play. I'm not saying that that's the greatest function. I'm simply saying the function is called greatest. All right, a little bit of a interesting wording there, but let's do greatest. We can now do greatest and input all of the parameters we want. Now, as you can imagine, you can always do greatest star if you had all numeric values, but in my case, it's not all numeric values. So I'm going to specify greatest for capital gains and capital loss. So let's see what this brings us. It should bring us an interesting result here. It does bring us what we expect. It compares those two columns and return the results as we want. If you want to see this in an interesting way, let's bring back the age, and then we can see it by age, folks, what the greatest of the capital gain versus capital loss was. There might be some really interesting use cases for this, but it's one of those SQL Delight functions hopefully you can take advantage of. Now, that said, let's jump into the third functions for SQL Delights in this series. We might do a series on this. This is the very first one. There are tons and tons of functions in Snowflake, as you know. So if you find this interesting, comment below, say, Fru, keep doing this in the DemoHub, and we're going to make sure we do a lot of this and surface a lot of these really cool functions in a series for SQL Delights. Now, the third function here is the COALESCE function. Now, this is something that most folks will know. If you've done SQL for any amount of time, sooner or later, you're going to come into the COALESCE function, but it's still an important function to call out. And if this is new to you, essentially what the COALESCE function does is, let's go back in here and look at the data sets we have. We do have some looking at the capital gains, capital loss. We want to return the first non-null value we see in any stringed inputs we provide. So in this case, if we are going to select from capital gains and capital loss, we can always see that we do have nulls, and we want to just return the first non-null for our results. This is where coming in, taking advantage of the COALESCE function could be a very powerful option to use. So do a COALESCE on that and throw in the age just so we can see that along with the age. In this case, should return 765. In this case, it should return 205. Go ahead, execute that. In a few seconds, we see the results looking really cool. So COALESCE is a really cool function, very common in the SQL world. If you're going to do any comparison, sooner or later, you're going to run into COALESCE. Now, the fourth function we are going to look at is, drum roll, exclude. Now, exclude is a really cool feature. This was a little bit newer in Snowflake, but can tell you this makes the life of the analysts, SQL writers really, really, really excited. So let's take a look at exclude. As usual, we're going to see the table we have honestly, this table is not a representative of some of the tables you see in the wild. There are folks with tables with hundreds, if not thousands of columns. We're talking about wide tables, lots and lots of columns. Now, imagine having to go in and essentially enumerate and type out each column name just to make your select statement work, right? It could be daunting. Now, if I want to bring every column, except maybe for some reason we don't want to bring native country and income bracket, but we want everything else, how do you approach that, right? One way is to simply go in and start typing and exclude just this two. Well, exclude, what if we just excluded the two, right? You see where this is going. This is where that exclude function comes into play. The syntax for that is you do your select star, you bring back everything you want, and then you jump in with exclude. There is no comma here, separation, select star, exclude, and now you can enumerate all the columns you want, excluded. So if you want income bracket, you want the native country not to show for some reason, maybe for your reporting, you're trying to create a view. So just go ahead and exclude that. So everything is going to come in except these columns. And that just makes it really, really simple to use. All right. So that's a very, very powerful feature. And you can always go in and just to make it look formatted a little bit nicely, go in and do exclude as such. And those columns should be excluded. We don't have those columns. So again, if you have table with dozens or even hundreds and they exist out in the wild, this could be a really delightful function to have and to use. So Snowflake exclude is a powerful function. Now let's jump into number 5, the last but not the least. But as we promised, there will be a bonus. You don't want to miss that bonus. So number 5 is the offset. Offset is a really cool function to be aware of. Now, to really appreciate offset, let's go back in and do a select of the data we have. Select star from scene, customers, limiting 10. Throughout this presentation, throughout this demo, we've been going through and limiting 10. The results have been pretty consistent, which is good. In certain extent, we know that this always comes in 765 is always there. 2829 is always there. Depending on what you're doing, you might want to not see this because maybe you have results that are a little bit staggered down the list and you want to offset and get to those results so you can visually see them if you're doing that experimentation and working. Having this ability to do offset could be really cool. The syntax for offset is select star from and before. Now, instead of the limit, you can say offset and 2. So we're going to offset this first 2 records and then bring back the next 10 records, right? So almost like your limit. So offset the first 2 and bring back the next 10. And this is a cool way to give you access to zero in and focus on maybe data sets you want to see. If you have good ordering and you know exactly what's coming back, being able to do this offset could be a very delightful function to have and to use when writing SQL on Snowflake. We've offsetted that and now we can see records a little bit below what we used to see. And as long as you keep executing this, that offset will work. So really cool. We've seen 5 amazing functions you can start using today in Snowflake to really boost your analytics. Just to summarize, we've seen the concat, more specifically zeroing in on concat star. That could be really cool, could be very helpful for data quality, checking your data, making sure you have non-null values in any of your rows. Again, columns or tables with columns in the hundreds. This could be a very powerful function to have. We've seen the greatest. COALESCE is always a go-to. Exclude as well as the offset function. Now, before we jump off, we did promise there will be a bonus. And the bonus capability is shortcuts. For most people working within the Snow side, as a delightful capability is being able to take care of shortcuts. Now, if you work on Windows, you're going to do the Windows command will be Control-Shift ? And if you work on Mac, it will be the Command-Shift ? All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Command-Shift and type the question mark and voila, you have this shortcut popping up on your screen. So this could be really cool. There are tons of really cool, delightful shortcuts in here for you to take advantage of. Let's go through the list here. Keyboard shortcut, so obviously that brings it up. New query, escape. And here is the one that's interesting. Format query. I think this is down to a preference. There are some folks who want everything in one single line. Some want everything in every line broken. Up to you, each their own, but this capability is right there for you. Obviously, search, go to next line. I recommend, if you haven't checked out the shortcuts, this could be really powerful to jump around. To test this, we're not going to leave here without testing it out. Let's test it out with formatting the query before we jump off. Go ahead and do, in this case, we're going to do Command Shift. Voila. All the query statements we have has been formatted in a way. Now, you might like this or you might not like it. Again, it just comes down to a preference. Hopefully, this bonus SQL Delight on Snowflake in Snowside will be very helpful to you. So, as always, I hope this was a helpful session. Five really amazing SQL Delight functions and capabilities in Snowflake Snowside to take advantage of. If this was helpful to you, please go down in the comment section below, like it, share it with somebody that might get value out of it. This is the first time we're doing a SQL Delight series. If you think this is valuable, if you think there is value in this and you want us to go in and unpack and showcase more SQL Delights, there are thousands, just innumerable. There's lots and lots of these functions and capabilities. More than happy to do so. But your feedback, your signals in the comment section, in the like button, in the share button will let us know that this is something you find valuable. As always, thanks for sticking to the end with the demo session today. This has been Fru. I've been your host. I'll see you in the next demo.